Today I would like to talk to you about some ideas that come from the books by Neale Donald Walsch titled the Conversations with God series. I read these books back in 2003, 2004, and on and on. I've read them more than once, and you glean different stuff every time. And, I'm not going to make a video about how we should interpret it all. If you've read the books, you understand that it came through the filter known as Neale Donald Walsch, and therefore it's colored by his judgments and thoughts. But if you were brought to the material the way I was, then you got what you needed from it. So there's really, it's okay. I need to take a breath here. I've been researching the truth for a very long time. Probably at least 15 years. Maybe started back in 99, really. So, let's see, how do you pause this? So a lot of people that are in the circles, or whatever you want to call it, the YouTube people, the people that I'm around on Steemit or Gab or any of those places, I keep having to pause. Many of these people are fairly new to the truth. They've just learned about the satanic cults and the hidden secrets and the fact that the pharmaceutical companies are trying to kill you, not help you, and the pedophilia and everything else. They're just learning the truth. And I'm speaking mostly about people who are coming to this via the Mandela effect or via the email release from WikiLeaks last year. Welcome! We've been here for a long time. And anyway, so the thing is, though, in these circles, there are so many disparaging, well, maybe not disparaging, there's so many differing views that, it's difficult to explain. Okay, so on the one hand, you have the cabal, the cult, the people that want to create what we all know of as the New World Order. And in this instance, this is a bad thing. This is something that's bad for humanity on the whole. It will give them complete control. It's like the movie Snowpiercer, which was a horrible movie, but that's exactly what they're shooting for. And, that's after the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games comes next. But, which I can't believe anyone would like those movies. It's about them literally controlling everyone and making children fight to the death. And no, it's not a study on social consciousness. It's them putting their will into your brain. Period. Anyway, so among these circles, I keep hearing socialism's bad and communism's bad. And you know what? If those people were in charge of it, yeah, it is bad. But that's the true nature of humanity. Complete, total, and utter sharing. That is what we were designed to be. The reason it doesn't work is exactly what you think. It's the evil interjection. So people say, oh, it'll never work because of greed. Well, that's one of the evil interjections. But greed is not natural to humans. It was put forth upon you, and you don't have to have it. So in the books, Neale Donald Walsch and God, which I believe is the Father, not Satan or anyone tricking him. I believe that he really did have some communication, because we all can have this communication. And you can tell if it's from the highest voice or not. But in this communication, God describes highly evolved beings and their society. And when I read it, I was crying because it was what I knew. It was what I I've felt, and I've been there before, and I've lived this way, and I have a recollection of it with my spirit and my soul, even though it didn't happen while I was in this meat suit. I'll just say it that way. While I was in this particular iteration of myself, I have no conscious memory of living like this other than the times that I was at the Rainbow Family of Living Light gatherings. I've been to a couple of those, and that's where people share everything. People are nice to each other, and there didn't seem to be any judgment. It was a wonderful place. And make sure you understand, I'm not talking about rainbow gardens or any of that pedophilia crap. I'm talking about the Rainbow Family of Living Light that meet in the National Forest every year on the 4th of July to pray for peace. Now, I haven't gone lately because it was starting to really just fall apart. All the elders were dying. It started in the 70s, and they were in their 20s when it started, so, Anyway, this is going to be a long video, obviously. So we need to talk about highly evolved cultures. And I've just gone and found a blog where someone already went over this, because it's going to be a whole lot easier that way. And I will be pausing and coming back a lot, so I hope that's not too annoying. But it's a rather long blog article. So there's the table of contents. This is a blog titled "A Shift in Consciousness," maybe, and maybe it's Master Derek. I just did a search and found it. So let's go over a little bit about what Neil Donald Walsh and God are talking about. And I say God, even though I don't really use that word anymore in my own thoughts. I use Father. But because the word God appears on this page, my brain is going to think that and say it a lot. So Neil asks, is there life on other planets? Are your children elsewhere in the universe? And God says, of course. Are these civilizations more advanced? Some of them, yes. In what way? In every way. Technologically, politically, socially, spiritually, physically, and psychologically. For instance, your penchant for your insistence upon comparisons, and your constant need to characterize something as better or worse, higher or lower, good or bad, demonstrates how far into duality you have fallen, how deeply into separation you have submerged. In more advanced civilizations, you do not observe these characteristics. And what do you mean by duality? God says, the level of a society's advancement is reflected inevitably in the degree of its duality thinking. Social evolution is demonstrated by movements towards unity, not separatism. Now I'm going to stop right here, because there are people that follow me because I believe in flat earth. Well, I shouldn't say believe, because I don't believe in flat earth. I know it's not a ball of the dimensions of which we were told. And it's not a belief to have scientific facts. So I try to steer away from saying that. So, to begin with, this God says there's life on other planets. Do you automatically throw all this out because you're a flat earther? No. Because it's coming through Neil's filter, who believes in the global model, believes in the solar system. So, what could be other planets to him could be other dimensions to us, could be other districts, whatever you want to think of, but don't throw it out just because of that. And then we get down here where they're talking about unity. So then everybody who is aware is like, oh no, they're trying to push this unity crap on us. Well, they're trying to push something completely different. It seems the same in many ways, but it's really not. They're pushing a false unity where they're saying, hey, let's all be unified, but that's because they're trying to trick the other races, well, not races, the other ethnicities. It's very difficult to explain, but don't let this language bother you, because I'm not sitting here talking about what the social justice warriors or their handlers are speaking about. This is higher thought than that. This goes beyond that. And it's very strange to me that a lot of the things that they say are actually the solutions, but not in the way that they would implement them. Now, I think I've gone on about that enough, and I hope you understand that this means something different than what they're saying, even though it seems to sound the same on the outset. Neil says, what else marks a society as either primitive or advanced? The degree to which it implements its own highest understandings. This is different from what you believe. You believe that a society should be called primitive or advanced based on how high its understandings are. But what good are the highest understandings if you do not implement them? The answer is they are no good at all. Indeed, they are dangerous. It is the mark of a primitive society to call regression progress. Your society has moved backward, not forward. Much of your world demonstrated more compassion several years ago than it does today. Now, I want to mention also, these books were written in the 90s. Like, I think 91, maybe 97. Long time ago. Okay? And I'm sure there are more current things where Neil has addressed what's actually been uncovered and going on. I'm not real sure about that because I'm not really in that loop right now. I've been hanging out in different loops. But, you know, David Wilcock has come out very strongly against the cabal. And those two were both on the Gaia. I don't know. Anyway, so this guy has pulled it together in a way that you can understand the concepts that are talked about in Book 3 of Neale Donald Walsch's series, Conversations with God, an Uncommon Dialogue. Well, it says it comes from the whole series, so maybe it's not just from Book 3. So we're going to go down here and talk about what makes up, well, I'll just read it. From this point on, I will be enumerating and explaining characteristics of the highly evolved cultures which make up the ideal world, which some refer to as utopia. These characteristics and ideas come from Neale Donald Walsch's Conversation with God series. Unity, value of life. The first guiding principle of advanced civilization is unity, acknowledgement of the oneness and the sacredness of all life. And so what we find in all elevated societies is that under no circumstances would one being willfully take the life of another of its own species against its will. An example of this is the way of the Native Americans, who would not even pick a flower, an herb, or a plant without having this communication. What he means by that is by asking the spirits for permission to kill it for food or for its hide. Sharing. Highly evolved beings share everything with everyone. Not a being goes without. All the natural resources of their world, of their environment, are divided equally and distributed to everyone. A nation or a group or a culture isn't thought to, quote-unquote, own a natural resource simply because it happens to occupy the physical location where that resource is found. The planet or planets, which a group of species calls home, is understood to belong to everyone, to all the species in that system. Indeed, the planet or group of planets itself is understood to be a system. It is viewed as a whole system, not as a bunch of little parts or elements, any one of which can be eliminated, decimated, or eradicated without damage to the system itself. Each individual being is important. The fact that individual beings do matter is reflected in the fact that effect on the species system is uppermost when considering any decision. The species system, its ecology, plus the relationship of the inhabitants to themselves, to each other, and to the environment. In short, it is the interrelationship of all the species of life. So, if you remember from science or whatever, we're talking about being interdependent. I believe that's the correct word. Boy, it slipped out of my brain just as soon as I thought of it. I believe that's the correct thing. We're interdependent. It is understood that the species system supports all life and every being at the optimal level. Doing nothing that would harm the species system is therefore a statement that each individual being is important. So you can already see how their idea of oneness and unity and a one world government differs completely from what we're talking about here, because they want to control all the resources. Not only the individual beings with status or influence or money, not only the individual being with power or size or the presumption of greater self-awareness, all beings and all species in the system. Next point, understanding of the needs and balance / priorities. Within a species system, the needs need to be treated equally, but the needs themselves are not all equal. It is a question of proportion and of balance. As an illustration, let's use two living species, trees and humans. Obviously, trees do not require as much daily maintenance as humans, so their needs are not equal. Yes, they are interrelated. That is, one species depends on the other. You must pay attention to the needs of trees as to the needs of humans, but the needs themselves are not as great. Yet if you ignore the needs of one species of living things, you do so at your peril. Trees convert carbon dioxide, which is plentiful in our atmosphere, into oxygen, which is not plentiful, for us to survive. We in turn release carbon dioxide, which the tree needs to survive. Highly evolved beings choose not to clear the land of trees to raise cattle, to slaughter and eat, because they know that eroding the species system is not productive, but rather destructive. They choose to do this rather than serve the desires of one small portion of the system, for they realize that no species within the species system can survive if the system itself is destroyed, which we're well on the way to doing. And I say we, but it's not we, which they are well on the way to doing. But then again, we're all one, so boy, isn't it confusing. Here are some guiding principles. In a highly evolved being society, they have two basic guiding principles. We are all one. Every decision, every choice, all of what we call morals and ethics is based upon this principle. Everything in the one interrelates. That's exactly the same thing when people talk about if a butterfly beats its wings and there's a thunderstorm in Taiwan. This is that exemplified. We all know this. Everything is interrelated. When you move a piece of paper here, something happens over there. No one member of a species could or would keep something from another simply because he had it first, or it's his possession, or it's in short supply. The mutual dependency of all living things in the species system is recognized and honored. The relative needs of every species of living organism within the system are always kept in balance, because they are always kept in mind. And the earth keeps things in balance, and they've been so imbalanced. This is why there's crazy weather right now, because things are completely unbalanced, and I guess the earth is fixing that. Ownership. Personal ownership for highly evolved beings can be described as stewardship in our language. Highly evolved beings are stewards, not owners. Highly evolved beings do not possess, they caress. Well, I don't know about that line. That is, they hold, embrace, love, and care for things, but they do not own them. In our case, they see us as having a possession obsession. Now, if you've been raising your children with gentle parenting techniques, if you've read the continuum concept, many people who are on the path of enlightenment are already grasping this thought, that part of the problems in the world are people feeling like they own other people or own cats or dogs or own anything. And see, all the capitalists don't understand this, and I really don't know how to explain it, and I keep wanting to. That's why I'm making this video. Capitalism will always fail because it will always put an elite at the top. There will always be a way to funnel the money to the top. Because in capitalism, all you need to make money is money. So therefore, whoever originally thought of the idea of money basically owns the world, which is where we are right now. And that is why capitalism is a failed system. But like I said, don't get all hung up on the fact that all these weirdos who support the cabal and the cult believe in socialism, because they're brainwashed and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know. They're just repeating something. It's very hard to understand how what they're saying sounds the same as what I'm saying, but it's completely different. Anyway, I'm going to get back to this. Highly evolved beings deeply understand that the physical planet beneath their feet is not something that can be possessed by any single one of them, although they may be granted parcels of land for which to care. If she is a good steward of the land, she may be allowed to pass stewardship on to her offsprings. Yet, if at any time they prove to be poor stewards of the land is no longer kept in their care. They will willfully give up their property. Now, in these cases, those people just have something else that they do. They're not cared for because of that. Highly evolved beings live very long lives. Some beings live forever, for as long as they choose to remain in corporeal form. I thought it was corporeal. Because of this, individual beings are usually around to experience the long-term consequences of their action. They are able to live long in their bodies because they don't pollute the air, the water, and the land. They never consume animals, much less fill the ground and the plants which the animal eats with chemicals. They would certainly correctly assess such a practice to be suicidal. They do not pollute their environment, their atmosphere, and their own corporal bodies as humans do, by smoking, drinking alcohol, etc. They also exhibit different psychological behaviors that equally prolong life. For example, they never worry, so they don't even know what stress means. They have no concept of that. Neither would they feel hate, rage, jealousy, or panic. Now I want to put in another interjection. In the book The Continuum Concept, In Search of Happiness Lost by Jean Littleoff, which is one of the most important things I ever read. And it's like anything else. There's all kinds of stuff in there that's not necessarily true or right or fits in with your beliefs. But if you're meant to be there, you'll get what you need from it. Something just popped up. What was that? Oh, did it stop? I don't know what that was. Okay, so let me get back to my train of thought here. So in that book, there's a model who goes down to South America with a bunch of guys to hunt diamonds. She has no idea that the native peoples that she meets will change her entire life and make her feel differently about everything, I guess. So during this trip, they have to cross over a river. And they're carrying all these things over the river. And all of the European bred men, the white men, are complaining. They're like, oh, these rocks, the water's bashing into me. It's so heavy. Oh. But the native peoples, they were just laughing and smiling and going on about what they were doing. And, she talked to them about it, and they have no word for for work. There's no word for work. Everything that's happening is just what's happening. It's not considered work. It's just life. And I subscribe to that as well. I understand that very fully. And I did as soon as I read it. A lot of these concepts, it's like I'm not from here. I'm from somewhere else, because this is what I know. Highly evolved beings are able to control their emotions because they understand that all things are perfect. There is a process in the universe working itself out, and that they do not have to interfere with it. Thus, they never worry. There's no such thing as guilt or shame. Guilt and shame is something which is imposed on a being from outside of itself. It can then be internalized. But then, since they understand that they are one, they do not impose guilt and shame onto themselves. And in highly evolved societies, the elders raise the children. Now, I haven't quite figured out how that works out with, breastfeeding, because to raise human children the way that they are physiologically designed to be raised, you breastfeed them for at least 3 years, 3 to 5 years. So I haven't quite figured that out. But in highly evolved cultures, elders live closely with the young ones. They are not shuffled off to live by themselves. They are not ignored. Instead, they are honored, revered, and held close as part of a loving, caring, vibrant community. Elders organize and supervise the learning process, as well as housing, feeding, and caring for the children. Offsprings are raised in an environment of wisdom and love, great patience, and deep understanding. The young ones who gave them life are usually off somewhere, meeting the challenges and experiencing the joys of their own young lives. They may spend as much time with their offsprings as they choose. They may even live in the dwelling of the elders with the children. It is the elders who do the raising, who take the responsibility, and it is an honor, for upon the elders is placed the responsibility for the future of the entire species, and in their societies it is recognized that this is more than should be asked of young ones. No competition. They realize that when one loses, everyone loses. They therefore do not create sports and games which teach children and perpetuate to adults the extraordinary thought that someone is winning while another is losing as entertainment. Okay, this is important. There are lots and lots of games that you can buy now for children that teach cooperation. I wish I could remember the name right now, but I own many of these sorts of games, and I think that it's extremely valuable to raise children in these thought waves. Highly evolved beings share everything. Thus, when another is in need, they would never dream of keeping or hoarding something they had, simply because it was in scarce supply. On the contrary, that would be the very reason for sharing it. They are also enriched by sharing rare things. They feel enriched by sharing everything freely without needing to profit. Indeed, this feeling is the profit. Survival of the fittest. In highly evolved being societies, since the first guiding principle is we are all one, therefore the one is not fit unless the all is fit. Because of this, survival of the fittest is impossible. There are no have-nots. There's no such thing as the destitute or the poor in highly evolved being societies, since they have an awareness of sufficiency and a consciousness that creates it. Through their consciousness of the species system, nothing is wasted or destroyed of the natural resources in their home planet. This leaves plenty for everyone, hence, there's enough. Living in clusters. They live in clusters, otherwise known as communities. But for the most part, they have abandoned their versions of what we call nations or cities. This is because cities became too big and no longer supported the purpose of clustering. They see the grouping together in large cities creates problems. Okay, now this guy seems to have more in his blog, which I may go and do a further video about. But I just really want to put this out there because it's very confusing for me that the people that seem to be coming to the same place that I'm at don't understand this part. And I wanted to make a video, so I did.